one of those policymakers that we're going to be speaking to right now is the Minister of Tourism for South Africa. That's Minister Derek Hanekom. He's just come out of the second Inter-African ministerial session, and we pick up our conversation on that point. Minister, thank you so much for making the time to join us. Now, this is the second session that you've had with your counterparts from around the continent. Take us a step back. What did you want to achieve when you first envisioned this idea? And a year later, do you think you're one step closer?
Yeah, well, thanks very much, Nozipho. When it started in 2014, you have to see it in the context of the growth of Indaba as a primary premium tourism trade platform for bringing together buyers and sellers from the African continent. It's over the years it started assuming increasingly an African dimension and an African flavor, and in fact now it is termed a Pan-African tourism trade show. So last year, as you correctly said, for the first time we brought African ministers together to have this dialogue and share experiences, identify common challenges, opportunities, etc. So yes, it happened last year for the first time. We didn't this year particularly take stock of progress since last year, but in the course of the dialogue and the discussion, various areas of progress were referred to. For example, there's significant progress amongst some countries in the introduction, for example, of a uni-visa, and so we can broadly put that into the category of travel facilitation, make it easier for Africans to travel each other. So that's intra-African tourism and intra-African travel, if you like. So it's the East African countries between Zimbabwe and Zambia. They reported great progress. It's also the islands, on the east coast between Mozambique, I should say Mauritius, Seychelles, Madagascar. They've also reported good progress, not only in travel facilitation through easy visa access, but also through direct air links. That becomes very important. So progress is being made, but new opportunities we identify today, and how we can take it even further. That was discussed today.
What are you most excited about when we take a look at some of these new opportunities? No doubt the positives that have come out of the uni-visa that was piloted between Zambia and Zimbabwe is one of them. But what should we be expecting from the tourism front for the region and for the continent going forward?
Nozipho, I think the first thing that excites me and I think excites other people is the identification of opportunity. The fact that tourism has been growing across the continent over the last few years, but it has this massive growth potential. So it's the offer that we have, the incredible offer that the African continent has, and the diversity that we have. So at this stage, I think it's important to note that while the tourism arrivals on the African continent stand at 56 million as we stand, it's a very small percentage of total global travel. So it's in fact only 4% of global travel. If we can get it to, and Africa's population is 15% of the global population. So if we can bring that 4% to 15%, imagine a fourfold increase in intra-African travel and travel to Africa from other countries, and it is achievable. Right. So what excites me is the fantastic offer, but the other thing that excites me is the atmosphere between African countries. You know, notwithstanding some of the challenges we've had in South Africa, there is the feeling that we are one continent, and there's a feeling that we advance ourselves together. And we work together to advance our common interests.
Minister, you've touched, of course, on one of the sore spots, that being the xenophobic attacks in South Africa. But there are other perceptual risks that African countries have to deal with, terrorism being one of them, Ebola being another one of them. What are the key thoughts that are emanating from your ministerial discussion as to how do you take these issues on collectively?
Yes, well, Nozipho, and that was a major part of our discussion today, is the way we market ourselves, brand ourselves, and manage some of these real issues that do exist on the continent. We can't deny the fact that there was a disease outbreak called Ebola on the west coast, or rather on the western part of Africa. But honestly, the majority of African countries are unaffected by Ebola. But because of perceptions about Africa, that something happens in somewhere in the west of Africa that necessarily it affects and makes the rest of Africa dangerous. There are possible terrorism outbreaks or incidents of terrorism in some parts of Africa. Necessarily the rest of Africa has to be dangerous and has to be at risk of terrorism attacks, etc. I think we're speaking in one voice, that we have to change those perceptions about Africa and project a more positive message. The fact that there were outbreaks of terrorism in Kenya, of course it negatively impacts on tourism in Kenya. But the truth of the matter is we should not only put the onus of responsibility on Kenya to say, but we are safe. And the tourism destinations that we have in our country are quite safe to visit. We should all be doing that.
Right.
We should all be marketing Kenya and telling the world that Kenya is safe. We should all be saying that you are not at risk visiting African countries, not at risk for contracting Ebola, for example. And so when there's an outbreak of xenophobic violence in South Africa, we know these are isolated incidents. We know it doesn't reflect the sentiments of our people, and we must collectively project ourselves as essentially caring people, warm and welcoming people. We do research, Nozipho, on feedback of tourists who come to visit South Africa, for example. One of the strongest things that they say upon leaving South Africa is not only the fantastic places they saw and the experiences that they had, but they talk about the warm and friendly people that they encountered. And we've got to hold that and say this is something that we have. So it's really about branding, it's about messaging, and about being consistent and bolder in our messaging, if you like.
I've run out of time, Minister, so I'm just going to sneak a final question in, and let's talk about South Africa in particular. To a large extent, we are dominators when it comes to the safari experience on the African continent. What is your plan for making South Africa more than just a safari destination for travelers from outside the continent?
Yeah, Nozipho, we've already advanced way beyond just being seen as a safari destination. But having said that, we're a sort of an excellent safari destination. Not that other countries don't have great wildlife experiences to offer, in fact, a great variety of wildlife. I think that one of the strengths that South Africa has is the quality of the lodges, the quality of the wildlife experience that we offer, and then combining it with a host of other experiences, if you like. So good cities with good cosmopolitan life, vibey cities, good shopping, and then many other destinations that you can visit, because few people these days visit a country purely and exclusively for the wildlife experience.